Committee meeting. I am Councillor Barbara Blake. I'm the chair of this committee. If members can introduce themselves, please, starting on my left.
All right, Rachel H, Vice Chair.
Scott Emery, Highgate Ward.
Sean O'Donovan, Councillor for Tottenham Hale.
Lester Buxton, Councillor for Crouch End.
Nicola Bartlett, West Green Ward.
Councillor Brennan, Councillor for Muswell Hill.
Councillor John Bevan, Northumberland Park.
Thank you. Can officers introduce themselves, please?
Cody Sprott, Principal Committee Coordinator.
Justin Farley, Legal Officer.
Rob Shazowski, Assistant Director, Planning, Building Standards and Sustainability.
Kevin Toole, Interim Head of Development Management and Planning Enforcement.
Valerie O'Keefe, Principal Planning Officer.
John McRory, Major Applications Team Leader.
And Richard Truscott, Design Officer.
Thank you. And if there are any officers in attendance virtually, they'll introduce themselves when relevant. So now on to item 1, which is filming at meetings. This meeting is being recorded. All registered speakers should be aware that they will be recorded for live or subsequent broadcast via the council's internet site or by anyone attending this meeting. Item 2 is the planning protocol. Members and speakers are requested to note the information set out at item 2 on the agenda. Item 3 is apologies. We have apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Worrell, Councillor Ibrahim and Councillor Collette. Item 4, urgent business. I have no items of urgent business. So I'm on to item 5, which is declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest, please? No. Okay, thank you. So item 6 is the minutes of the meeting. Can we approve the minutes, please, held on the 7th of November? Are they agreed? Thank you. So item 7 is planning applications, and we're now on to item 8, which is Hornsey Park Road, 157 to 159. It's pages 5 to 220 in the pack. I'm not going to read that out. I assume we've all read it. And I will. We have 2 speakers in objection, and they will both have 3 minutes each to speak. Are the objectors here to object? There's just yourself, is there? Right. Oh, okay. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to the planning officer, please, to introduce the application.
Thank you, Chair. The proposal is for the demolition of the existing structures and erection of 2 buildings to provide residential units and Class E floor space and provision of associated landscaping, a new pedestrian route, car and cycle parking, and refuse and recycling facilities. This slide shows an aerial view of the site highlighted in red. The site is irregular in shape and includes a narrow access road off Hornsey Park Road. The site is located to the rear of the properties which front onto Hornsey Park Road, with the entrance between two-storey detached houses which adjoin the row of taller two-storey Victorian terrace houses on either side. And the site is in close proximity to the Wood Green town centre. This is another aerial view of the site highlighted in red. So the site is bounded to the west by the Clarendon Square Alexandra Gate development, and to the northwest by the Iceland site, which has an extant planning permission for a mixed-use development. This is the site photos, and the site is occupied by a few disused industrial buildings, previously used as a joiner's workshop and car repair garage. And the existing buildings on the site are 1 to 2 stories in height. This is the adjacent permitted Clarendon Square Alexandra Gate site to the west, which is a mixed-use development comprising of blocks of up to 14 stories in height to the southwest and much taller blocks to be built out to the northwest of the site. The site's red line boundary adjoins the Moselle Walk, which forms part of the Clarendon Square Alexandra Gate development. This is the adjacent permitted Iceland site mixed-use development, which goes up to 9 stories in height. So the site forms part of Site Allocation 21, which is known as Clarendon Square Gateway, which seeks the redevelopment of the site with a mixed-use employment-led scheme that creates a new link between Wood Green and Clarendon Square. It should be noted that the Iceland site falls within the same site allocation and is under separate ownership. And across Brook Road to the north is a low-rise industrial estate known as Bitton Place, also within the same site allocation, again under separate ownership. The following policy designations apply to this site. So the proposal is for the demolition of the existing light industrial buildings, erection of 2 buildings comprising of Block A, which is Part 4, Part 6 stories in height, and Block B, which is Part 4 and Part 5 stories in height. Block A accommodates 21 residential units, which includes 3 wheelchair accessible units, it includes 3 wheelchair accessible units on the ground floor, and Block B accommodates 97 square metres flexible Class E commercial floor space, 11 residential units, plant rooms, and the future den connection room. The housing mix comprises of 3 studios, 12 one-beds, 13 two-beds, and 4 three-beds. The proposal also includes a new public through route to create a new link between Wood Green and Clarendon Square, Alexandra Gate. And 3 disabled parking bays are proposed with cycle parking and refuse storage and landscaping provision, including shared communal courtyard, child play space. In terms of consultation responses, concerns have been raised by local residents as part of the council's consultation on the proposal, And this includes a representation from Catherine West MP. And this is all included in section 5 of the officer's report. The considerations include principle of the development, affordable housing, high quality design, quality of accommodation, landscaping, impact on amenity, transport, and sustainability. This slide shows the ground floor plan. Block A is to the south and Block B to the north of the site. 3 wheelchair accessible units are located on the ground floor of Block A. The ground floor flats of Block A have their own private gardens, and the commercial unit highlighted in purple is located in Block B. And Block B also accommodates the plant rooms and future den connection room. And the cycle store for both blocks are located within a gated standalone structure on the northwest part of the site above part of the Moselle Covert. The Moselle Covert is highlighted by the green line. And this slide shows the gate which gives access onto the new public through route. And this gate will be open throughout the day, but then closed after dark, with fob controlled access to improve the site security. 3 disabled parking bays are proposed at the end of the site entrance route on either side, and child play space is located on the western end between the 2 buildings, and a central courtyard is proposed. This slide shows a new public route, which forms part of the site allocation requirement. The new public route is highlighted by the green arrow through the 2 blocks and across the site that will provide permeability and integration between the existing residential neighbourhood from Hornsey Park Road and the newly emerging high-density mixed-use development within the Heartlands growth area. And the public through route from the application site could also easily open onto the northern end of the Moselle Walk, which forms part of the Clarendon Square Alexandra Gate development. And it's important to note that this access route will be blocked off until the extent planning permission for the Iceland site is developed, at which point the new route will be completed. In terms of employment for the scheme, 97 square metres of flexible Class C commercial floor space is proposed on the ground floor of Block B. The employment floor space proposed is a net loss of 768 square metres. However, this is justified as the ground floor of Block B will accommodate a number of different uses, such as the access, the residential communal refuse store to serve both blocks, the required plant space, and a future decentralised energy network room, which is one of the site allocation's development guidelines. And the site allocation identifies a minimum development capacity of 6,734 square metres of employment floor space across the site allocation as a whole. And the proposal, in conjunction with the Iceland development, would equate to 2,304 square metres of employment floor space across the site allocation. Bitton Place, within the same site allocation, is yet to come forward for development and has the potential to deliver the remaining employment capacity as set out in the site allocation. The Class C floor space is designed to be flexible and appeal to a broad range of commercial occupiers. And the marketing evidence demonstrates that an office is more appropriate on the site, given its backland location, the lack of passing footfall, and surrounding residential land uses. The commercial floor space would potentially generate 8 jobs. There was previously 5 employees on the site. Replacement floor space provides a valuable contribution to the employment floor space and employment opportunities in the borough, and the scheme would result in local labour training initiatives. This slide shows the indicative master plan with an indicative ground floor plan which demonstrates that the remaining part of the site allocation, that is located to the north of Brook Road, known as Bitton Place, which is yet to come forward for development, could comfortably accommodate the larger commercial units and can deliver the remaining required employment floor space. And to illustrate, the indicative master plan demonstrates that Bitton Place could comfortably deliver 4,546 square metres of employment floor space. And the slide also demonstrates a new public route within the site allocation connecting Hornsey Park Road, Brook Road and Coburg Road can be created with an active street frontage of commercial uses along this new route. This is highlighted by the black dotted arrow. In terms of affordable housing, an independent viability assessment was submitted for the scheme and was reviewed by a third party. The agreed viability position was 6 shared ownership units, which equates to 18.75% affordable housing. The applicants have submitted evidence which demonstrates that registered providers are not willing to take on 6 shared ownership units. And the council has also confirmed that they do not wish to acquire the shared ownership units. The lack of interest in acquiring the affordable housing units is considered to be an exceptional circumstance, which would allow the council to consider an alternative through a payment in lieu, as supported by policy. The viability review concluded that a payment in lieu of £355,516 is the maximum reasonable amount based on 6 shared ownership units with an early and late stage review. The applicant, however, has agreed an increased amount of payment in lieu of £600,000, as they have requested that a late stage review is not included as part of any grant of planning permission, which would otherwise allow the council to claw back any additional monies should a development commence in more favourable financial circumstances. An early stage review mechanism will be secured by legal agreement. This is an illustrative view from the site entrance of Hornsey Park Road. And Block A is to the left and Block B is to the right. The new buildings will be faced in 3 tones of related red brick. The red brick provides a contrast with the pale beige stones, the parapets and windows surrounds. The step form and height mediates between the lower rise housing on Hornsey Park Road and the higher rise development of Clarendon Square, Alexandra Gate and other neighbouring sites to come forward. This is an illustrative view from within the site. You can see that the balustrade of the projecting balconies provide a glimpse through to safeguard privacy overlooking. And the ground floor commercial unit of Block B to the right will activate the frontage. The ground floor flats of Block A to the left are designed with defensible planting, and the development incorporates windows and balconies with an outlook onto the central courtyard space and public route. You can see outdoor seating and outdoor lighting within the central courtyard, and you can see the Clarendon Square, Alexandra Gate development in the background. This is an illustrative view of the dedicated child play space for 0 to 11-year-olds. The child play space is significantly overlooked by the windows and balconies of the proposed development to ensure natural surveillance is established. This slide shows the illustrative landscape plan. 6 new trees will be planted, which replaces 3 Category C low quality trees that will require removal. This slide shows the landscape proposals. The proposals include green roofs, grassland, shrubs, defensible planting, new tree planting and playable landscape treatment. You can see that the standalone cycle store will have a green roof, and the biodiversity net gain is greatly in excess of the mandatory 10% net gain required. In terms of impact on amenity, there will be no material impact on the amenity of nearby residents in regards to loss of outlook or privacy. There will be no material impact on the amenity of nearby existing residents on Hornsey Park Road in regards to daylight sunlight, and the impact on daylight sunlight on the extant planning permission for the Iceland site and buildings D3 and D4 of the Clarendon Square Alexandra Gate development currently under construction is minimal. This is the setback distance plan. This slide shows the 18.7 to 20-metre distance between the main rear wall of the properties on Hornsey Park Road and that of the proposal. This plan shows that the design measures incorporated into the scheme include the use of obscure glazing on the lower part of the upper window to avoid direct overlooking into the gardens of the neighbouring properties on Hornsey Park Road. And the high level part of the window will be standard glazing that will provide an outlook at eye level, but not allowing a clear view of neighbouring gardens. This is the 4th floor plan. Each flat on the upper floor has a balcony or terrace, and the proposed balconies have been carefully positioned and designed to avoid adversely affecting neighbouring amenity in respect of overlooking loss of privacy. And the balconies are positioned to look onto the central courtyard, child play space, and onto Moselle Walk. And this applies to all the balconies, terraces, and all the upper floor flats. And this plan shows that both blocks have been carefully designed to step down to ensure they are not visually intrusive when viewed from the neighbouring properties on Hornsey Park Road. In terms of transport and parking, the site's PTEL is 4, which is good. The scheme is a car-free development. 3 blue badge spaces are proposed for the residential component, and the residential component of the scheme comprises of 55 long-stay cycle parking spaces and 2 short-stay cycle parking spaces. And the commercial component of the scheme comprises of 1 long stay and 1 short stay cycle parking spaces, and delivery and servicing activities take place from within the sites. This is the section 106 header terms, and accordingly the proposal is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Right, does the committee have any clarification questions, please, to Valerie? Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, you used the stage early review and then late stage review. Can you tell me, are they the same? And if any of them are going to be a condition of this application?
Councillor, so originally we would have had an early stage review, which would take place just earlier in the construction process. That would review the viability, see if it's changed from the point whenever we make the assessment in this application stage. The late stage review would usually take place towards the end of the development of the proposal, and again would try to capture any uplift in value. So the proposal here would be that we include an early stage review. So if there's any change, we would be able to capture the uplift value from that. But the applicant has taken the commercial decision to increase the payment in lieu to avoid a further late stage review. So we'd only have 1 review mechanism in this proposal.
So in theory, an application could actually have 2. Both, 1 of each, in theory. Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Any more clarification? Councillor Rice?
I was interested particularly in the comment you made. I think you were, I said 21, and you were talking about the difference or the differences that might arise or does arise if there's 2 communities, the high-rise community, I would say, and the ground floor community. I find that rather interesting because Tottenham Hale, for my part, there's this development between people who live on the ground floor or on the level of the land and people live in the sky. And I just wonder how you're going to get around that. I mean, you had a map or drawing or something which showed the flow of people from one part of the site to the other. But the issue is the people who live up in the sky as opposed to the people who live on the floor. How are you going to deal with that?
Councillor, so just to explain, I guess the proposal at the moment would be 100% private. So it's not a case of we're going to have any different tenures or anything like that. So you've got people on the upper floors not interacting with people on the lower floors. The whole building will just go through the same individual access point within the building, so everyone will interact with each other. Does that not answer the question?
Talking about a tension that exists between residents of the upper floors of these developments as opposed to or against residents who live on the ground floor. There is a tension, and there's no point saying it isn't tension, but there is a tension. Which needs to be worked on in development, get out of the way.
You're not, sorry, I'm not really clear, Councillor Rice, what your question is. Can you just phrase it as a question, please? Oh.
Question twice. Well, take it in status. Is there or is there not a tension between communities who live on the higher floors as opposed to those who live on the lower floors? Whether this site or any other site.
So the people who live on the upper floors have access to all the communal spaces such as dedicated play space and the communal amenity space. Similar to the people who live on the lower floor, they've all got equal access. Is that what you're referring to or not?
All right, okay, well, let's just move on then. So Councillor O'Donovan, please.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking particularly at the Designing Out Crime Officers report from page 173 and some of the issues that was raised. Now, this area from Hornsey Park Road, it up to now it's had a gate because it's commercial activities were taking place there, so people weren't walking through that area. Obviously now it'll be more open, so from Hornsey from that area can walk through to the Alexander Gate, the Clarendon developments, which seems to make sense. It allows more movement of people in a shorter time. But obviously the people who are joining the properties, and there's 4 properties that immediately adjoin the property, they will not be used to people walking past their gardens. 2 of the immediately adjacent properties have quite high, sturdy brick walls, but the other 2, and that's in that area where the blue badge parking is. When we went on the visit on Friday, they've got wooden fences that aren't always in best condition, as lots of wooden fences aren't in the best condition. So what will be done to reassure them, possibly to make those fences more sturdy, or have a brick wall if that's what they need, in order that they can be reassured in that area, and then it relates to other points that the Designing Out Crime Officer raised, which I think some of them have been addressed. The other point I made is in relation to the Moselle. Obviously, the Moselle is an important part of Tottenham and Hornsey, and I can see in this there is a proposal to have some soft planting over the Moselle in that area, not to deculvert it, but to have some soft planting so people that are moving into that area know where it is, know the history, so it is recognised. And I see one of the conditions is that there is going to be a survey, a post-development survey of the Moselle. Presumably that is to make sure that no damage has been caused to the culvert during the developments. Thank you.
So the applicants have actually proposed that the boundary fence would be 2.1 metres high with a 300mm light rail above to prevent climbing. So that is one of the proposals. Did you refer to other aspects of security that you had concerns with?
Well, that length of sorry, it's that length of brick wall and also the length of fencing in particular I was concerned about. And I think the other point that you made, which is a reassurance, is that the entry gate will be closed at night, the entry gate to the Alexander Gate development.
We would have a boundary treatment condition as well. So further details will be provided in regards to that. And we have secure by design conditions as well.
Councillor Brennan.
So I'm sort of interested in the fact that there isn't any social housing and that we've got the £600,000 payment in lieu. If we've removed the second, that second review stage or whatever it is, am I to, and there's an offer of 600,000, it rather sort of like suggests that the value is going to go through the roof. Why is there an offer of 600,000 to review this? Is it just time? Is that the reason for doing that?
I'll answer your first question. So you were asking why affordable housing is not provided on site. Going back to this affordable housing slide. Firstly, the applicants have provided evidence to show that registered providers are not willing to take on 6 shared ownership units. And also the council's also confirmed that they do not wish to acquire the shared ownership units. There is a policy which I have referred to in the second slide, that affordable housing units is considered acquiring the affordable, so lack of interest, which is in this case where registered providers and the council are not interested, we can consider exceptional circumstances which will allow the councils to consider an alternative. And in this instance, it will be a payment in lieu, which is supported by policy.
Councillor, so the reason for requesting that there isn't a late stage review effectively is just it makes it very challenging to get financing for a development. It's one of the things just with the way the market is at the moment, it's extremely challenging. Getting finance from banks and lenders and so on is very challenging, and having any of those additional requirements on the proposal can then affect the ability to get funding effectively. So that is sort of the situation. We don't believe that there's going to be any significant change in sort of the construction and housing climate for the foreseeable future as much as we would like to. Thank you.
Okay, quickly.
Just so, what will the £600,000 pound payment sort of provide for us?
Thank you, Councillor. So that money would, because we have our own housing delivery programme, most likely go to the housing delivery team, and they would be able to feed that into their own developments and help to finance that, help to create some additional units on another scheme. So that would be the proposal, would go into the housing delivery team's funding. But we couldn't say at this point where exactly it's going to go. Thank you.
And just to elaborate on that a little bit more, is where we have Section 106 money, payment in lieu for affordable housing, that goes to the Council House Delivery Team, the funding is usually used where there is not grant funding available from the GLA or the government. So there's usually lots of very tightly defined sort of funding criteria on certain sizes of home, be it family or not family housing and so on. So actually it means that it can ensure the Council House Delivery Programme stacks up financially for projects where we might not be able to get funding as a council from GLA or government grant. So that just gives you an idea of what it is. Obviously that's not the decision for today, but it gives you an idea of where the money actually goes. Thank you.
Okay, all right, I've got Councillor Rice and Councillor Bevan, then I want to move on. Councillor Rice. We weren't really sure what your question was, Councillor. Sorry, I didn't hear what you said. So can you put your mic?
I'm talking about question. I read a second question. And that question was to do with affordable housing, which has been dealt with.
That's been dealt with. Thank you, Councillor Rice. Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, I'm really concerned about this off-site payment because we can assume from what you've said that all the other adjacent sites that are going to be developed later on will have the same problem. They'll only have enough money to provide a couple of affordable units, which nobody will want. So we will get another load of money, which, in my opinion, means that we are not mixing the communities, because there will be no social housing in any of these developments. So we're not mixing the communities. And my assumption would be that most of that money, when it goes to the council, is spent in the east, where there is already a very high concentration of social housing. So that's my concern. I'm not quite sure how we can address that, but I think it's a really bad outcome.
The extant permission, the Iceland site, actually has permission for affordable housing. It's council homes, and it falls within the same site allocation as this application.
So these sums of money that we're collecting, can we insist or ask the housing development team that they be spent on social housing in the West?
I would say as part of this application, it would not be appropriate to put that in the heads of terms. The affordable housing monies can be spent borough-wide, but in other functions of the council outside of this particular meeting, decisions can be made on where to spend it. I know the Council House Delivery Team and their equivalent assistant director and their cabinet member are keen that the money is spent across the borough and not just in the east of the borough. And there are Council House delivery schemes in the west of the borough as well. So that's not really something that can be specified today as part of the heads of terms in this meeting, but I am aware of, through wider work of the council, that is very much the intention, that it's not just spent in the east, it is also spent in the west of the borough.
If it's about this application, no, well then, if it's about this application, okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. I'm pleased to see the quality review panel have looked at this a couple of times, and many of the points they raised were taken on board. There was one point that they, in the meeting the last meeting they were talking about the commercial units, and they said because of the very residential area, they've strongly suggested that any commercial unit there should be one that doesn't have constant traffic flows, or a sort of business that has as few deliveries as possible. Is that something that can be brought on as a condition in this application?
Thank you, Councillor. I don't think we could restrict it at this point because we don't know who the end user could be. And the other thing, of course, is that all commercial falls under Class E, so it's very difficult to restrict it if it's got permitted development for the same use.
Yeah, so Councillor, market evidence that was submitted actually demonstrates that an office is most likely more appropriate on the site, given its backland location, lack of passing footfall, and the surrounding residential land uses as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So we'll now move to the objectors. So Mr. John Miles and Mr. Marcus Ballard, you both here? Yes, if you'd like to come, please, both of you, up to there. Yes, I'm just going to just wait a moment. So, good evening. Right, you have 3 minutes. So, Mr. Miles, Mr. Ballard, right. If you could just introduce yourselves when you speak for the minutes, and you have 3 minutes, and I will keep you to that. So, whoever's going first, Mr. Miles? Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm John Miles. I'm here to speak as a resident of Hornsey Park Road. I object to this development, with which, despite its being identified within SA 21, Clarendon Gateway, I share a postcode. The site managers, with their yard fires, disruptive vehicle deliveries and recent tyre dump, have been my neighbours for 30 years. I object to this latest assault on our viewscape. We already endure the shopping mall. There is no sensible case for 4- and 6-storey dwellings behind the back gardens of my distressed near neighbours, just as there was no case for 8-storey dwellings on the Iceland site beyond it, or St William's D4 tower, which overlooks it, or the 27-storey tower we've been promised close to the railway line. We're told the 32 properties will contribute to much needed housing stock. Much needed by whom? None of them will be affordable. Surely the 70% of non-affordable rooms across 1,800 homes that St William are building at Alexandra Gate will be enough for those who would want to move to Wood Green from choice. This would have been a good site for multi-generational co-housing, maybe 15 or 16 properties with additional and desperately needed open space designed around the blue ribbon requirements for the Moselle Brook. Something related to the local population in the most aged section of Noel Park Ward. This would have been a good site for the kind of 2- and 3-storey mews we see on the Frankham Quay site near Lordship Wreck. I must draw attention to 2 particularly questionable aspects of the recommendations. First, anybody who's lived there and carried out bird counts and observed local nature and wildlife as I have will be able to tell you that the impact on biodiversity will be slight. There are already starlings, robins, dunnocks, sometimes a wren and a woodpecker sighted regularly in and around the yard. Second, there's no significant case for this new link between Wood Green and Clarendon Square. Pedestrians and cyclists will continue to use Brook Road and Coburg Road if they're coming from the mall, and they'll go through the new Hornsey Park and the forthcoming Moselle Walk if they're coming from the south. Really, no one is going to divert unnecessarily to use a route through 157, 159, which brings me to my final point. If this development is part of SA 21, that is where its vehicle access and construction traffic access should be located, through the Iceland car park in Brook Road. It's really long overdue for Haringey to use its powers and direct planning and house building and place shaping in the Haringey heartland.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miles. That's your 3 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Blake.
Thank you.
You can read the rest of the sentence another time.
I did say I'd keep you to 3 minutes. So, Mr. Ballard, thank you. You have 3 minutes as well. And if you could just introduce yourself.
Okay, Marcus Ballard, Parkside Malvern Residents Association, former Vice Chair. We've read the application and followed it in its sort of coming together and had concerns for a long time. As John has said, this site is part of SA 21, and it needs to be developed with the its neighbouring sites in SA 21 in mind. It's wedged at the back of houses in Hornsey Park Road, behind Iceland, a towering development. There is no master planning of this site in conjunction with the others. In reading the officer's report, we find all sorts of misleading statements that are probably leading the committee to believe that it has been master planned, The master plan that's in the application is little more than 1 page. It's self-serving and it does nothing I've checked the definition of master planning in the dictionary and other journals, and there is no comprehensive master planning here. If there were, we would see the river being at the centre of the plan for this site. The report says the river is too deep. It's not too deep. We know how deep it is. It's just below the surface. It says it's polluted, or infers it's polluted. It's not. We're testing the river. We know it well. It's exposed next to the Heartlands Pocket Park. There is no odour. There is no sign of pollution there. There is no attempt to examine the feasibility of opening the river, the brook, including it in the planning of the site, putting it at the heart of SA21, or indeed even respecting the blue ribbon. Now that is council policy, it's GLA policy, it's surely national policy to protect the route of rivers and the nature that goes with the roots of rivers. And yet this application and all those who've supported it have chosen to ignore that. I support John's point that we don't need a through route. The reason there is this through route, totally undeliverable, since you don't own the site that is Iceland, and you don't own the site that is Heartlands. It's there because this is backland. And I suggest you don't need it. Final point, the CMP is mentioned. We had a disaster with Heartlands leaving the CMP as a condition. That should not be repeated. It needs to be a reserve matter. And the final point is we also had a really poor experience with the planning on the section 106-278 works. There need to be proper 106-278 works on Hornsey Park Road at the junction of this what is going to be a very busy access route. That's my.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Would you mind switching off your microphone, please? Okay, so does the committee, do you have any questions to the objectors, please? Councillor Bevan.
Apologies, we're just going to get the sound technician. One moment.
Yeah, I've got slightly distracted now. So you mentioned you had 2 concerns. One was about some pay works or something, was it? And then another one was, in my mind, it was about the. You said you had 2 concerns, some previous developments. Can you clarify and amplify them a bit more, please?
CMP, the Construction Environmental Management Plan, it's absolutely essential that that is reviewed as part of a planning application. In my experience, most are absolutely at the heart of planning. In the case of Heartlands, it was made a condition and discharged without any review with local people by a planning officer who really, frankly, wasn't very interested in it. As a result, Mary Noyna Road was closed, fully closed for about 14 months, partially closed probably for nearly 2 years. There were vehicles in Hornsey Park Road causing noise and vibration and physical damage. The CMP ought to be a reserve matter, so it comes back to committee, has a proper report, particularly how sensitive or rather how difficult the access is. And then there could be consultation. But the thought of this being built, I mean, vehicles can't even, normal vehicles running up and down Hornsey Park Road can barely pass each other. Cars can, but meet one large vehicle and it will be across the middle of the road. I cannot see how this can easily be developed. And it's not going to be good if the builder says, well, we've got to close everything within 30, 50 meters of the access, for example. And then there's the dirt, there's the noise, there's the hours of operation. So sorry, so that's CMP. The other one is the section 278 106 works. We work very hard with St William and National Grid to get a highway improvement outside the Pocket Park that would have been a shared surface of the same quality finish as Mary Noyner Road. When that was translated into the 278 agreement and highways officers had control of it.
Mr. Ballard, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I do want to focus on this.
Sorry, I was just explaining that the 278.
I do want to focus. I want to focus on this application that we have here, rather than
because it is the access to the site, and 30 whatever units plus commercial use on a backland development that goes into Hornsey Park Road, where you're saying you're going to take away residents' parking so that people can get into that site. This is why it's so important that it's properly designed. The road is dysfunctional and it is hostile at the moment. You cannot just put this development straight into Hornsey Park Road without having proper environmental improvements in Hornsey Park Road.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Can you just switch off the microphone, please? Any more questions, please? Councillor O'Donovan.
Okay, thank you. Again, you raised the point of affordable housing, which was raised by my colleagues earlier, and we heard the reply. In terms of the Moselle, that is something else that I raised earlier, and whether or not what consideration has been given to deculvert it in this area. If not deculverted, what proposals are there to mark it? I think, as I said earlier, but I didn't reply. I understand that there's going to be some planting along there, and it's not going to be a hard standing area. There's obviously the question in relation to what you've just said about vehicle movements, and there's vehicle movements when the commercial units are there. But then there's also, more importantly, the vehicle movements, whether at the time of development, and is there any possibility that the development vehicles could actually come from the Iceland area rather than from the Hornsey Park Road? I know that the quality assured, quality review panel did talk about the possibility of there being rather than this walkthrough, there should be no access from Hornsey Park Road. There should be a gate there that could only be opened by the people that run the commercial unit and the residents. I mean, broadly, would be in favour of people being able to walk backwards and forwards because it
Councillor O'Donovan,
makes it more open.
what's your question to the objectors, please?
Okay, well, it's those 3 or 4 questions.
Okay. Which I've lost a bit of track. Anyway, go on, please.
I'd point out that the planning officer's report says that the blue ribbon could be extended through the back gardens of Hornsey Park Road residents. So therefore, the blue ribbon should also continue through this site, be properly respected. So a landscaped blue ribbon strip, and it would then join up with the Moselle Walk, which is a proper attempt at respecting the blue ribbon. This is national GLA and Haringey policy to be done. I'd support, I think the neighbourhood, the road would support this not being open. I think that would be respectful to the immediate neighbours, having gates on it, and then the people who live in this new development can join the Hornsey Park community, which is where they are, rather than being tucked at the back, probably through a fairly unsafe gap in a fence to go into Brook Road. I think there was one other point I wanted to make. Oh yes, if the planners can secure this through access for pedestrians through legal agreement, if that's what it'll take, I see no reason why they shouldn't secure legal agreement for the construction of Hall Road. It needs to be no wider than the access onto Hornsey Park Road. That could certainly be secured if it can be, if it works for pedestrians, it could work for construction.
Okay, thank you. Can you switch off your mic? Has anyone got any more questions for the objectors? Maurice, you came to the table. Did you want to add anything to that, please?
Yes, sure, Chair. With your permission, Maurice Richards, Head of Transport and Travel. It's on the construction management plan, which will be secured by a Section 106 legal agreement, not a condition. So that will be monitored, and it will have a construction logistic monitor who will monitor it throughout the life of development and will also sign off on the plan. In relation to Section 278 works, those will be done in line with our highway standards. It's always been a highways agreement, but we will make sure we consult PRMA and neighbours in terms of the scheme that come forward. I think the proposal is for a table outside the development proposal, which we have agreed in principle with the developer, subject to further detailed designs and road safety audit. I think we've done something similar with the current crossing, and we'll do the same with local residents. In relation to the construction via Brook Road, developer doesn't own that site. Hornsey Park Road is a public highway. There is an existing access onto Hornsey Park Road from the development site. So I think it will be almost impossible for you then to say this development proposal will have to be constructed from Brook Road when the developer has no rights of access from that site. And there is access currently onto Hornsey Park Road. But what we'll do as part of any construction management plan is to make sure that we minimize the impacts on the residents of Hornsey Park Road. We've already had detailed discussions with the developer. We understand the sensitivity of Hornsey Park Road. I have been in conversation with PRMA and other residents over the last probably 4 or 5 years regarding the traffic situation on Hornsey Park Road. And I do agree with them, any kind of park lorries, or if it's not managed properly, could have an impact on the road network. And that is exactly why we've secured £15,000 as part of the construction management plan to make sure that these impacts are managed and monitored as the development move forward.
Thank you. So I just want to bring Kevin Tohill in now, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to pick up some of the points regarding the culvert. There has been, various different reports undertaken to try to address issues with the culvert. The Environment Agency have been consulted on this. They've requested a number of conditions which we have put on the application. We mentioned before about the affordable housing and the challenge there is to develop at the moment. Anywhere I've looked at deculverting in the past, and this is no different, it is a more expensive business than it initially appears. And the challenge there is to try to balance the development where you would balance all the different parts that we've got. With our site allocation, we did require that there would be an access directly through the site. That's putting strain on the overall quantum of development that you can get on the site. And so that should be taken into consideration, that the site is working very hard already, and to try to put on something additional in relation to the culvert would just push the scheme into sort of unviability. But we do have a number of conditions that would basically cover the culvert, and various different remediation strategies have been requested. And I think that should probably cover everything. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. And just to add to what Kevin has said, and just my regular reminder to committee councillors, decisions must be made in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. That's the law that you make decisions on. This site has a site allocation, which is the development plan. And one of the points in that site allocation is about the Moselle River. And it says, any development should ensure that as a minimum, the culvert is made safe. And that's what's been done through the Environment Agency conditions, so it achieves that. And the potential, ideally, the potential for the Moselle to be deculverted is explored. So it only says ideally, and it only says explored. And that's what has been done in consultation with the Environment Agency and with the developer. So that's what the site allocation says. And this proposal has met that requirement of the site allocation regarding the Moselle River. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Mr. Ballard, did you just want a point of clarification? Because you sort of half raised your hand after Maurice had spoke.
Marcus. I really just want to say, I mean, we've been.
No, I'm not, if it's a point of clarification, I'm allowing that. I'm not having another speech.
Naturally for
Mr.
both.
Miles, so what's the point of
The odd
clarification?
word
please?
will come in that's out of place. We've just been put of our place. I'm entitled to make that comment. If there is.
Sorry, I missed that. I'm sorry.
We've just been put in our place by the officers. I'm entitled to make that comment. If SA21, Clarendon Gateway, is a developable area, it needs a master plan of its own. And our opinion is that the Moselle Brook should have been at the centre of that, not waiting for the Environment Agency to send instructions.
Right, okay, thank you. Thank you very much to both of you. If you could vacate the seats, please, because I'm going to bring the applicants forward. Yeah. Good evening then to you as well. So is it just yourself? Oh, the two applicants, two applicants.
I'm speaking, my name's Stephen Davey. I'm the director of the architectural practice. I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant. The applicant is here and planning consultant.
Right.
But
Okay, so you've got 6 minutes. So you have 6 minutes
yes,
to
okay.
speak. So it's just, I'm just trying to, it's just yourself.
It's
For,
just
for 6 minutes, right,
But
okay.
if you've
So,
got questions, we're all here to answer.
okay, all right,
Yeah.
okay. So if you can just give your name again, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Stephen Davey, director of Stephen Davey Peter Smith Architects. You okay to go? All right. Yeah, I'm here on behalf of the applicant to speak in support of the application. It's a scheme we've been working on, I think now for about 2.5 years. Within that time, we've had extensive pre-applications, design review panels and dialogue with the planning design team and officers to get to the point where we are today with a recommendation for approval. Just running through some of the points that were raised by the objectors. The SA21, as was pointed out by the officers, involves 3 sites: our site, the Iceland site, and that on Brook Road. And as part of our application, we did look at a wider master plan of how the commercial space could be incorporated within the schemes, given that the Iceland site had already been consented and was basically a live consent when we were working with it. So there was a fixed number there, and it was then how we would use the rest of the land to create the requirements of SA21. That not only included the commercial space, which we've shown on the diagram behind you around me, which shows where we suggested that space could be, but also the desire and requirement to provide a public route through from Hornsey Park Road through to Brook Road, and we suggested in with the master plan even further. That was presented at the QRP and was generally accepted by the QRP panel. There was the question about the commercial space on our site on Hornsey Park Road and whether that was the right place for it, and perhaps it should be residential. And it was felt in terms of policy that commercial space should be provided. And we see it, as the Markham report suggested, that it would be maybe a small office or something in that location. So we don't anticipate a great deal of deliveries to a unit of that size. Clearly, the other commercial space is all road frontage on Brook Road and would obviously accommodate much larger, more active uses and maybe more creative uses that are associated with the northern part of the Heartland site. So that's how we kind of developed that proposal. In terms of the Mosel itself, I'll just touch on that because we're obviously familiar with that runs along the back of our site, and our site boundary runs down the centre line of the Mosel. And obviously on the other half of the Mosel, if you like, on the other part of the site, you've got the Iceland site and you've got the Heartland site, and neither of those have opened up the Mosel. So it would be kind of strange if we tried to do something on our side. There are obviously the technical issues that have been raised and mentioned by officers here and the Environment Agency. So we have adopted the approach taken by the two adjoining sites that are already consented. And we have our public route that can flow through and does cross part of the Iceland site. So at the moment, we have a gate at that point, which will obviously prevent the route through until that neighbouring site is developed. Touching on other things, transport through Iceland, again, that was raised by the transport officer. That's outside of our demise. We have no control over that land, so we have to look at obviously access from Hornsey Park Road. The site itself currently is an industrial site and could have vehicle traffic in there, which is unlimited in its size. Obviously, this becoming now a largely residential development, any traffic through there will be much lighter. In terms of construction, we have a construction management plan, and there is a condition, as again pointed out by the transport officer, to deal with how that comes forward as the scheme moves forward. So we're confident we've dealt with all the issues relating to access, and there's obviously a detailed transport report as well. I think that really touches, Massin. Massin obviously has been developed throughout the whole proposal over the 2.5 years with officers and the QRP, and they've generally been acceptable to the approach we've taken. I'd say that the scheme over that period has become maybe more restrained than its original proposal, which has been obviously supported by the QRP, and they've been very keen on the way we activate all facades of the building. So at all times we've been looking at producing a high quality development that gives all the units in the scheme triple aspect or more. All the rooms that that have faced towards those properties on Hornsey Park Road have, as described in the design review panel, obscure glass on the lower parts, but that's to their secondary window because they also have an aspect that looks either into the courtyard or in another direction. So all those rooms are dual aspect as well. They are not focused in one direction. And that's the key thing we've had to do and look at throughout the scheme, where we've been looking at the relationships not only with Hornsey Park Road, but the development that's been coming forward on Iceland and the Heartland side. And we've worked very hard, and I think the QRP do say that we've produced a very good scheme in what is a challenging site. And I think that's where I'd leave it. You know, we've had a lot of detailed discussions.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Book.
Thank you, Chair. You did mention it, maybe I just missed it. You said there was a desire to have the path through the site, but where was that desire from? And then as a follow-up, which I'll just ask now to save the chair time, how have you accounted for obviously there's going to be an increase of traffic down through the site because it's currently not a path, but specifically to do with delivery drivers for not the commercial properties, but for the residences of, you know, takeaways and packages.
In terms of the route through the site, that is a policy requirement. And again, it was discussed at the QRP, and there was the QRP at one point maybe it shouldn't be there, maybe it should be there, but policy is that route is required to link through with the later developments happening to the north of Heartland side. I'm going to lose my voice now. If I had a drink of water, that would be helpful. So that was one of those sort of, if you like, drivers through the scheme that we had to consider that as a pedestrian route through the scheme, not a vehicular route. In terms of the vehicle movements and the deliveries, this again was discussed at length not only with the transport team in numerous meetings outside the pre-application, but also in the QRP. Because at one point there was a consideration of, do we bring refuse, for instance, down to the lower end of the site, and deliveries all happened from Hornsey Park Road. Obviously, the nature of the road is it is quite busy, it is quite narrow. It was felt everything should come on site, including refuse collection as well as deliveries. And as you can see, there's the turning head now in the middle of the scheme. And one of the requirements of that was that we create a dedicated footpath along the side, which you would see in the CGIs, to keep people away from traffic, and there's other traffic calming measures. So any deliveries, the way it is laid out, you do have the ability that 2 delivery vehicles could be in there at the same time, or one could wait while one pulls in. And that's all within the transport report. And we've gone through a great detail with the highways teams as to how that can be managed. And I would say as well, just so you're aware, the refuse store, which is in the base of Block B, the northerly block, was originally where that singular parking space is. And that was moved following consultations that it was felt that should go within the building rather than be a standalone unit. So yeah, there's been lots of discussions around transport.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan, can you switch off could you?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Is there, you know, you're not deculverting the Moselle now. Would it be possible theoretically for it to be deculverted later, or would it be impossible once we've done these developments?
Well, we have between our 2 blocks and against them where the Mosel is, we have our child play space and access through to the cycle store that sits behind the back of Block B. In terms of opening up the culvert, I don't think it's sort of practical in such a short length, to be perfectly honest. And technically, obviously, you know, the Environment Agency have had their say about it as well. And you've got the building to the north, which is the Iceland site. Currently, their building is where we have our play space. The footprint of their building comes quite close to the Mosel as well. And I think if you're going to open up a river, you kind of want to be both sides, not one side and looking at a concrete wall. It just doesn't work. And I do have some concerns as well that unless you do this over quite an expansive area, it's kind of like, you know, that river can, you know, run relatively fast. If you put a small hole in it, you know, where does it go then? You know, and it could create more problems. Although it's a lovely idea, I think that approach would have probably been needed to be taken on, including probably a large part of the Heartland site as well. So you've got an expansive area. So, you know, we've all seen the weather the last few days and the amount of rain that can come through. And, you know, that river heights change, and that could create a number of other issues.
Councillor Bevan?
Yeah. If we were to add a late review condition, can the developers talk a bit about that now, why they don't want that and what effect it would have? And then also, can I ask the developers to accept a CMP plan, the construction manual plan, as a condition?
Sorry, Councillor, I was just speaking to the client. What was the last point about the CMP?
Would the developers accept that a construction management plan be part of a condition?
Just on that point, the CMP already is conditioned and it's prior to commencement. So we've got to clear that before we can even put a spade in the ground. And obviously there'll be detailed discussions with the planners and transport team with regards delivery. And obviously on a scheme like this, we would be using a considerate contractor. We'd talk to the neighbours. We're more than happy to sit with them and discuss any issues they've got and alleviate them as much as we can.
Hello, I'm the applicant, James Fox. Answer to your question about the late stage review. We've got a great deal of challenges with the affordable housing particularly on this site. And we've been working on this for about 6 months, originally looking to do affordable on site in Block B. Unfortunately, the financials just didn't allow us to do that. We've now got a position where if we look at the late stage review, we have real complex issues getting funding with our funders. Banks don't like it anymore. It's too complex, too many unknowns. So effectively, we're in a position now where we felt that we would need to take more risk to allow less risk on our financial position. We've been on this site for 3.5 years, so the financials are really hurting us. And so we thought the best way is to not be in a position where we may find we couldn't develop it in the first place. So that's where we are at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Any more questions? No? Okay. All right, thank you. And there's some materials. there.
No. People always have to tell me to do this. It's fine. Yeah, I was just saying that we've used 3 tones of red brick within the scheme, so it kind of breaks up. And I was asked to bring the samples along because I know you all went to site, I think last week, Friday. Yeah. So that's the mid-tone, which is partly on block A and B. That's the lighter brick that sits in the recesses on the lower 2 floors. And that's the darker brick, which you can just see on the back of block B there, the one closest to Heartlands. And we think as a tonal combination and a bit of texture, they work very well, as naturally I would. And then that's the material that goes around, as you can see in the image in front of you, around the living room windows, the key sort of, if you like, windows in the property. So it's not everywhere, it's just focused in certain places. And then there's the band at 2nd floor level. So we like to think we've taken some references from various places around us. Yeah, you're more than happy to keep them, so I don't have to take them home on the bus. But I'm sure you won't want me to.
Can you switch off your microphone, please? Thank you. Okay. Right, thank you. So I'd like to ask Kevin Tohill to confirm the proposal with a summary of any changes, please.
Thank you, Chair. The proposal remains as it was set out in the committee report, and the recommendation is to grant permission subject to the conditions set out in Appendix 1 and a suitable Section 106 legal agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so the recommendation is to grant. So we will now vote. All those in favour, please show. Okay. Unanimous. Okay, right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to everyone. Right, thank you. So we'll move on then to item 9. That's update on major proposals. This is about applications submitted and awaiting determination. So any questions, please, on that? Councillor Bevan?
Yeah, I've got 3. So on page 225, it's the Capital City College. Now, when that come before us, they were desperate to get that done quick because they would lose their government funding. Now, that was quite a time ago, but it still doesn't seem to be all legally signed off. So that's my first one. Shall I do the other 2 now?
Go through. Yeah, okay, do all 3, please, yeah.
Draper's Almshouses on page 227. Now that's been ongoing for good knows how many years. So when is that going to come to some fruition? And then the last one is International House on Tariff Road. Now, I might have got this wrong, but my recollection is that is the first development on this road. It's a road full of junk industrial buildings. So this first development there will set the standard for the rest of the whole road when all these other buildings come forward to be expanded. So I'm seeking that we really get a good standard there and that the QRP panel is involved in that application.
Thank you, Chair. So the college, Councillor Bevan, we're nearly there. There's a couple of little things on the 106, but I envisage that all being sorted out, if not this week, certainly next week. Draper's Almhouses, quite right. This is all subject to viability. We've asked the developers to go away and look at the viability of this scheme, the affordable housing aspect of it. There's still a fair way to go on that before we can bring that to members. So that's where we are with the almshouses. Unfortunately, it's taking that sort of time because of the fact that they are affordable housing. And we need to ensure that we're trying to secure that as well. But it's not so straightforward. But I can always give you another briefing on that, Councillor Bevan, if that would help. A little bit more detail. On an international house, yep, noted. QRP, Richard, I think you said that won't go to Q.
Can I?
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Bevan, we hadn't planned to take International House to QRP. It's quite a small scheme. It's like a little scaffolding and general building trades company who want to knock down the existing industrial unit and have a scaffolding yard, joinery workshop, and a couple of other sort of workshops for their building trades. It's quite a nice little development, but it was considered when we discussed it at the pre-app stage. It was considered to be below the threshold for the QRP. It wasn't considered to be a major. I don't know whether it is a major now, but we had said it won't be a QRP, and it's intended to come to committee early in the new year, like January or possibly February. If you looked at it, I don't know whether you still think it needs to go to a QRP. So I think it's a bit late to make any changes.
Okay, well,
I'll go round the road again just to make sure I've got it right in my mind, because if it is a first development on a road that's full of junk buildings, then I think we need to aim for a really good standard to start off with.
And we are.
And I think the QRP panel would be crucial to that and set the precedents. So if I have a look around that road this week, I'll give you a call. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Is that okay?
thank you for that, Councillor Bevan. Thank you. Councillor Bartlett?
Can I just ask on the progress on the former Mary Fielding Guild Care Home on North Hill? It says application to be validated. What does that mean?
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so the Mary Fielding Guild, as you know, there's an extant permission on there. Nothing's starting as yet. They've actually come back and with an application looking to put as part of the care home residential, but it's changed the scheme quite significantly. So, but the application is invalid at the moment. It's pending us requiring more information for us to make that valid and to be able to assess it properly before we get it out to consultation.
Sorry, just to check. So does that mean it would need to come back to committee if it's changed that much, or is it something that officers decide?
I would say that it would need to come back to committee because it has changed quite substantially as a proposal.
Councillor O'Donovan?
Thank you. Page 232, Reynoldson's Court, High Road. I assume that's not the actual court itself, but the land to the rear of the court.
Yes, the answer to that is yes.
Okay, if the answer okay, if the my follow-up, sorry, if the answer is that is yes, maybe the title could be changed to something like rear of Renaissance Court, because I do get quite a lot of people either who live there or live in the area are concerned that it is quite a beautiful building, needs a bit of upkeep, but it's a beautiful building that we're not thinking of demolishing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rice?
Yeah, the almshouses site near Bruce Grove. Is there application in already for that? Or I thought it was listed. Those almshouses.
John's already answered that. Just give the answer.
Yes, Chair. So it's in a conservation area. There are listed buildings there as well. So that's right, Councillor Rice. But yeah, the application is submitted, but it's not ready to bring to members at all at this moment in time because of viability issues. Lots and lots to go through before officers are happy to put it in front of members. Yes, there is. Yeah.
Okay, right. So item 10, applications determined under delegated powers. And that's decisions on applications under delegated powers for the period 28th of the 10th to the 22nd of the 11th, 24. Any questions on those? No? Okay, so item 12, we have no items of urgent business. And item 13 is the date of the next meeting for you to note as the 13th of January. So just remains for me to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And thank you very much for all the hard work of this year. Thank you.
Christmas.
Thank you.